So Doug trained after his residency training in '83. Doug practiced general urology for 17 years in Tampa. He stopped seeing new urology patients in 2000 and devoted all his time to vasectomies and reversals, eventually providing vasectomy services at up to 21 locations in Florida. And I remember driving around the state and seeing the big Doug Stein signs on the expressways. In 2010, he began his international vasectomy mission work and has now led 38 vasectomy missions to various countries, including the Philippines, Haiti, Kenya, Mexico, and Indonesia. He's co-founder of World Vasectomy Day, the largest annual male-oriented family planning event in history. And in addition to training doctors overseas, he's provided individualized training for 155 doctors from 5 continents in his main office in Tampa. He's performed, I don't know when you wrote this for me, Doug, but it's probably changed a little bit. Performed over 45,000 vasectomies and 1,900 reversals. So I will introduce Doug. I complimented him that I haven't seen him in a while, but he still has that fine head of hair as opposed to some of us. So Doug, take it away.
Well, David, thank you very much for having me. I love talking about vasectomy and can go on and on. So interrupt any time. I'll go to screen sharing now, if that's okay. So you can see some photos here and kind of how the thing is. It's a little bit hard to, let's see, I'm going to hit the word share. And David, I appreciated your introduction. And again, I'm pleased and flattered here. 2 organizations that I'm pretty much involved with are No Scalpel Vasectomy International and World Vasectomy Day. Let's see, I go to my next slide by hitting down or up, maybe enter. I probably should have practiced that. Let's see. Oh, I just rubbed my screen. That's it. I just used my touchpad. Anyway, No Scalpel Vasectomy International was actually started by a group of Filipino Americans who were running medical missions to the Philippines within a medical group called the Bisaya Medical Association. And it just got to be too much. Every year, the lines were longer and longer and longer. During the 90s, Ramon Suarez had learned how to do no scalpel vasectomies. He said, wow, this is what we really need in the Philippines. So at that time, the Philippines had about 94 million people, and they concentrated in an area of the central Philippines because they all went to medical school. 3 of the 4 went to medical school in Cebu, and that was the area with which they were most familiar. At the time, the Philippines had about 94 million people, almost 1/3 the size of the population of the United States in an area the size of Arizona. And it just so, and in 2010 is when I became involved with NSVI, Ramon and I having met at an American Urological Association meeting in Orlando. And he said, wow, why don't you come to the Philippines? And I said, wow, that's on the other side of the planet. I had never dreamed of going to that side of the planet, but it was an exciting time. And my first mission there was in 2010. And a lot of things were happening in 2010. I also met a man who came for training from Kenya. And I got involved with Ted Kaplan, who Sylvia knows, I think had read some sort of a throwaway on me and said, boy, I know this guy in Haiti who runs around in Haiti like you run around in Florida. Why don't you get involved there? So at the time, these were all countries which had fairly rapid population growth. Kenya is about the size of Texas and had almost twice the population. And Haiti is about the size of Maryland, which is our 5th most densely populated state, but Haiti has twice as many. And you can see that on the left that over the last 10 years, the Haitian population has increased by 14%, Kenya 29%, and the Philippines 17%, whereas the United States has grown more slowly up to our present of about 330 million. So we've kind of tried to, these are our main countries of focus, and I've run a number of missions there since then, about 22 to Haiti, 5 to Kenya, and 10 to the Philippines. And in these areas, we've established domestic teams, all slowed down by COVID over the last couple of years, but that we would pay the domestic teams between missions to carry on, and they would send me logs. Each is a doctor who was trained by NSVI. They're all in countries where the people are basically too poor to pay for many forms of contraception, especially vasectomy, and where the governments have no payment scheme to cover family planning. At about this time, my activity in a filmmaker by the name of Jonathan Stack out of New York City had decided to get a vasectomy and wanted to make a documentary about his own process of seeking a vasectomy. He had 3 children by 3 separate partners and felt that his life was in a little bit of disarray and had to bring himself under control somehow. And he saw a doctor on Park Avenue in New York City, and that doctor said, I don't think you're ready, but if you want to learn about vasectomy, you ought to go meet Doug Stein in Florida. And this was right around 2010 also, when I was traveling more, and he thought that this was kind of intriguing. So he decided, instead of making a documentary about himself, to make a documentary about me. So spent 2010 to 2013 preparing this documentary and following me around in Florida and following me around in the other countries in order to put together, it was about 300 hours of filming that ultimately resulted in a 52-minute film. So I don't know, it was financed by the Australians, the final edit had to be Australia, and it had to premiere in Australia, and it turned out that it premiered at the Adelaide Film Festival. But during the course of following me, at one point, I remember we were on the border of Uganda at a town called Busia in Kenya, and there were a bunch of guys who spoke Luo, and maybe a little Swahili, but no real English. And Jonathan, these guys had all had vasectomies, and Jonathan wanted them all to say, he came up with this idea of a World Vasectomy Day, and he said, repeat after me, we support World Vasectomy Day. So all these Kenyan guys are shouting out, we support World Vasectomy Day. And then Jonathan talked to me about it that night, and that's when it came into fruition. And it's a long history, but these are the locations where World Vasectomy Day has taken place ever since then, kind of hopscotching around the world. The latest was in New York City, and because one of the key players is a doctor in Iowa who's made a mobile vasectomy unit. And here he and I are standing on top of the mobile vasectomy unit on 7th Avenue in Times Square, trying to do anything we can to increase the awareness of vasectomy. At any rate, these are the missions, and you'd say, well, gosh, that's crazy. You've only gone to 3 places since 2010. Why haven't you expanded into other countries? Well, it's not for lack of trying. In some places, such as Colombia and Mexico, they have such strong local programs that they really don't need us because their governments cover the process, and they have good vasectomists. In some places, we got close, like in Venezuela and Ethiopia, but those missions were thwarted by political unrest. And in some areas, like Indonesia and Rwanda, they just have, they just don't have the local programs or the doctors with the local ambition to sponsor us. And there's a big group called the Vasectomy Network, a Google group of lots of vasectomy providers. And I always put out there, hey, if anybody knows a country where there's a doctor who kind of sees the benefit of drawing men into the family planning scheme, let me know. So it's not for lack of trying. So who does the vasectomies around the world? Well, in some cases, it's all the urologists, but in many parts of the world, it's actually the family doctors who do a large number of the vasectomies, especially, and you can see down at the bottom in Ireland and New Zealand, it's almost unheard of for a urologist to do the vasectomies. And indeed, the participants who have participated in these 35 vasectomy missions have been mostly primary care and OBGYN doctors and sort of a paucity of urologists themselves. We've had to cancel some missions. This is on the NSVI website, and you can see that we had to cancel some because of COVID. And then in Haiti, the president was assassinated on July 7th. So there was enough civil unrest and risk associated with traveling there that we canceled the last two in 2021. And then we've got something coming up in March, and I'm trying to get a feel for modeling whether it's safe to go down there again in March. I think the benefit of the missions is that it energizes our domestic teams and gets them going. Nonetheless, our domestic team still continues to work, and I think Sylvia will recognize Maudlin on the left and some of the other helpers there. They did 62 vasectomies in a couple of days in December, and those 62 guys had 432 kids. So we'd like to be able to get the family sizes down a little bit, because it seems like that population growth rate there is almost more than they can handle. This is an example of the bottom end of a log that they send to me, and you can see that I pay them based on the vasectomies. At a recent seminar, we decided to increase that a little bit, but Maudlin has to divide that up between himself, so really winds up only with about $25 per vasectomy himself, but an extremely dedicated guy. And so we just wire the money down to him, and that keeps him going. This is just a few pictures of his clinic, people in the waiting room, and here is Maudlin doing some counseling, and then actually doing the vasectomies. He's really an outstanding vasectomist, and very low complication rate, high success rate in very limited conditions. So he does a great job, gets good end separation, low failure rates. So we're really, really pleased and wish we had someone else. Worldwide, there are other barriers that just are almost, tough to surmount. In 2016, Baruch sent me an email, and he said, I'm a family physician from Israel. Vasectomy is almost non-existent in Israel, and we'd sure like to learn it. And I see you do some vasectomy training. So why don't you come on over here, and maybe we'll create a short course. Well, over the next couple of months, he and I went back and forth to decide what might be the best season for me to go there, and no religious holidays or anything when people might be focused on such things. And by October, we had decided a date, but by November, he said, sorry, we can't do this because the urologists don't support our effort to learn the procedure, and we can't find any institute that will support this without the urologist's consent. So I was disappointed to hear that. That's not too uncommon. There are turf battles all the time. And then a few years later, I was looking through some old emails and saw Baruch's, and I sent him an email and I said, hey, Baruch, how's it going? And he said, well, a few things have happened over the last 3 years. I had a vasectomy myself, an unsuccessful one. So he was, I guess, one of the 40 done every year in Israel, and it didn't work. So I think they need some training there, but it's hard to overcome some of these obstacles. I guess what makes vasectomy popular is you got to pay your providers, and you have to train them to be fast and efficient. And then you have to make it popular with patients, that you can't hurt them. You have to eliminate myths. You can see that my trainees come from countries where operators are fairly well paid, usually on a per case basis. We don't get many trainees coming in from countries, even if we pay their way, where there's not a payment scheme involved, because I always say everybody's got to pay the rent. And, if you're not paying people to perform procedures, then, they can do good, but like I say, everybody's got to pay the rent, and pretty soon people have to get paid. So we've certainly trained Maudlin to be fast and efficient. We try to get good information out there. We have brochures in about a dozen different languages, this one in Spanish, this one is in Indonesian or Bahasa, and Amharic for Ethiopia. And all of these are online as PDF files on the NSVI website, so that people in various countries can have it at their ready disposal. This is in Kenyan, and we spread these around by the hundreds, so that people in maternity clinics can learn about options for men. We feel that if we leave men out of the contraception equation, we're missing half of our opportunities to prevent unintended pregnancies. I guess people need to know the consequences of not getting a vasectomy. This has been one of my most popular billboards. And you can see that, I guess if you just remind them that might be some motivation. And lastly, men are more inclined to get vasectomies when they don't have to pay for it, or at least it's very affordable. Again, these are the countries where there's no insurance, there's no government assistance, people have very little money. Some people need to work every day, and if they don't work, they can't buy their food. So we decided to emulate the program in India, where for years India has covered lost wages and transportation costs by reimbursing 1,100 rupees as compensation for 2 days for getting a vasectomy. We tried for years to avoid paying patients anything, and it just really didn't work. We kind of did a study, and I presented this at the International Conference of Family Planning in Kigali a couple of years ago, and we were offering the no scalpel vasectomy and no needle techniques, same thing we do in the United States. We had the FHI 360 framework of successful programs. We had an enabling environment with a very supportive director of the location we were in, medical director. We had really good vasectomists. We provided education, and we couldn't seem to get the numbers up. But then when we began to pay patients for lost income and transportation costs, and we began to pay individuals who could go out into the community and educate them, acceptance rose. So you can see that the number of vasectomies rose considerably. During missions, our numbers don't rise because we're only there for 3 days, and it's really to energize the program, and that's pretty stable. But here you can see the numbers of vasectomies that have been done. NSVI has paid for 2,602 vasectomies through our domestic teams. And with some ups and downs, we had a second team, but we lost that when the operator emigrated to Canada. And then COVID-19 hit, that dropped things down. World Vasectomy Day always seems to inspire folks. But we have a couple of major obstacles that we may never be able to overcome in some parts of the world. One is the cultural one, where manhood is equated with the number of children that one has had and one's continued ability to inseminate a female. And the other one is where procreation is seen as a religious duty, as in the case of fundamentalists of various religions. And, there are percentages of both of those groups in every country. And I think that, there are those guys in the United States too, who will say, oh, wow, nobody's ever touching my nuts. No way am I going to ever get a vasectomy. But they may be the minority, whereas that group might be the majority in some parts of the world. I felt it most strongly in East Africa. So there are these major obstacles. We'd like to convert societies from ones in where acceptors are few and refusers are many, to societies in which acceptors are many and refusers are few. And NSVI and World Vasectomy Day have worked pretty diligently to do that in many locations throughout the world. But where those major obstacles persist, we've not been able to overcome those without, major social programs. So anyway, there's a pictorial summary of all of the missions on the NSVI website. The World Vasectomy Day website has excellent summaries of, and they do a really good job making motivational films and things, which you can see on the World Vasectomy Day website. So it's been a long road, and it's been a lot of fun. And I guess if it was easy, we wouldn't try, as we always say, but we want to keep going and keep it going as much as we can. So that's a quick overview of NSVI and World Vasectomy Day.
Thank you, Doug. If you can clear your PowerPoint off, and then we'll have everybody else up. I'd like to open. I wrote down 3 questions that I had. One, the picture you showed in Times Square about a virtual vasectomy. How do you do a virtual vasectomy?
Well, using 3D technology, people put on those glasses, and we've even, and through World Vasectomy Day, Jonathan Stack has been able to hire very, very good filmmakers and people who are quite technically savvy. And so what we did was we made a movie about what it's like to sit on the table and lay on your back and have the and have the vasectomist hovering over your private areas and what that might like. So it's kind of a gimmick to draw people in, and
Okay.
it started in the days of Rwanda. But no, we've never. You know, we can do virtual counseling, but we've never been able to do online vasectomies yet. You know, we hold your stuff up to the computer screen, and we can do it remotely. We're not that good yet.
And we're not at the do-it-yourself yet.
No.
And the 2 other quick questions: where might we see the movie? And 2, how do you get funding for all of this? Where you said you have, you pay your providers, and is there a fund set up? Is there a foundation set up?
Yeah, it's mostly donations. And if I can share my screen again, is that okay?
Sure.
If we go to let me go to share, and let me drop that down, escape from this. Well, I thought that escape gets me out of this PowerPoint, but I'm not sure how to end a PowerPoint in the traditional way. Let me see, let me stop share. And I'm gonna go to a different program here, and maybe when I share, that'll bring that up. Nope, let me hang on just a second. Anyway, we have a list of donors on the, I know what I might do. There we go. I think that's going to work. There we go. So if we go to the, this might get me out of you though. I better open up my window here, and we'll go to the NSVI website. These are our donors. And it comes in. What we do when we're doing missions is that the people who go on the missions actually pay to go on the missions by making a donation. And you can see that every now and then we'll get a fairly big hit of $10,000 or $20,000 for people who think that what we do is really, really good because they're concerned about climate change and the human population growth rate. So we'll get pretty good hits now and then. In fact, when we were at a recent ski seminar out in Colorado, one of our major donors who runs something called Population Relief International, he was one of the individuals who went up on a Jeff Bezos flight in December with Michael Strahan and a few others. So he has a lot of contacts, and he just contacted me one day from his home over in Merritt Island and said, I'll be there in a half an hour. And I said, how are you going to do that? He said, well, I'll just fly over. So he's a very wealthy fellow, and he contributed some, and some of the others from Fidelity Charitable are from other individuals who just think that what we do is great. So that helps keep us going. And individually, we donate ourselves. I donate if our funds get low and we're unable to pay our domestic teams to keep going. But generally, the missions don't cost too much because cost too much of our stored funds, because each doctor signs up to go on the mission and makes a donation to cover the costs of the mission. And then go ahead.
The movie?
And the movie would be on my website. You could just go to vasweb.com, and then you get to documentary film here. And I think And then Jonathan had made a series of webinars, but I think you can see a trailer here, and the actual movie is there. But there's lots of these different things out there that World Vasectomy Day has done. I could probably point you in the direction of if I went here and opened up the World Vasectomy Day website. That has sort of a library of all the videos that have been done. So if you just like click on 2018, it'll bring up a video, and this is one that was sort of neatly done by some of the Rwandans who are trying to make vasectomy more. Let me go back into that. Some of them are very inspirational, and that one, I just picked the wrong year there, but maybe the one from 17 was really an inspirational video that you might is probably worth playing. I'm not sure how to bring up, but a lot of interviews with you see, I don't know if the video will transmit off that, but you could watch these. Are you getting that audio?
Yeah.
This is when World Vasectomy Day was in Mexico. And the idea is really to elevate men who participate in family planning to kind of a heroic stature. And they're usually sort of snippets that. Let's see if I can do
Muy bien, ya estamos.
Let's stop that.
Mucho más animados porque esto me ayudó más a hacer las cosas bien.
La vasectomía.
Trying to stop it actually.
Delicada, no produce impotencia, que es lo que le da miedo a los hombres a veces. Entonces, por eso tomamos la decisión, es un tema de responsabilidad.
You click up at the
Stop it.
menu bar. X out of the menu, top of the menu bar.
There you go. I'll X out of the window, I guess. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. That'll do it.
Okay.
Can
But if
you,
have one that
I'm
was,
sure others have questions. Can you, you do the scalpelist. Can you explain that again to some of us, how you do that with no scalpel?
I can't.
How it varies and how it differs from the usual vasectomy.
I could show you if you'd like to see that. How about that?
That'd be fine.
It's very fast.
Okay.
So on the NSVI website, we have a page called Resources and Links, which is a lot of good stuff about vasectomy, no needle anesthesia technique, no scalpel, the mini needle anesthesia technique, no needle anesthesia. And these videos are contributed by operators in lots of different places who have become fairly slick at doing the vasectomy. Here is, I can show you a no needle vasectomy here if this comes up easily. So we're sort of clearing this fellow off, and this is the spray applicator that is used to anesthetize the vas
up into position.
And in some countries it's used, in some countries it's not. They use a mini needle technique.
Thumb and second DIP joint, and then sweep it anteromedially until it's just a little bit to the right of midline. On your right, it'll feel like a rubber band snap. 3, 2, 1.
So this is a spray applicator that
Nasty or not too
penetrates
bad.
a few millimeters and gets right around the vas.
I'll do the
And
same
the same thing.
on on your left.
is done on the
Here,
other
putting
side.
my
And
finger right on the site that I'm
so
going
we're
to
using
use.
less than 1/2 of 1 cc of anesthesia
Here's the
to-
first spot
to do the
created
procedure.
by the MetaJet. You might be able to see it, maybe not. It's very small. I'm using optical loops, so I get a little magnification. And I'm going to do this one just on the right side, 3, 2, 1, just a little bit to the right of midline. And now we've got these two spots side by side. If I come down and sort of triangulate, I could put another one over here and make a little sort of a box if I put 2 on each side. But I find that 3 pops really works perfectly. And here I'm going to do that third application, just 3, 2, 1, just beneath the other. And he may not even have felt that last one because of the anesthesia. And so there we go. We
So
have a
I'm
little
trying to get out of
triangle
this.
of 3 dots, and that provides a dime-sized area of anesthesia, just perfect for a vasectomy.
So let me close out of that and we'll go back in here, and now you'll see a vasectomy procedure. This is using
I wear optical loops, so I'm
So-
a little bit better at it.
I find that a little
And
magnification
if
helps.
I
So those are those
put
2
my
pops.
thumb
This might be the same individual.
Right on those 3 dots, I will, and bring the vas up into position where my thumb is. I will know, there they are again, that vas is right in the zone of skin anesthesia, so that when I secure the vas, he may feel me pushing from behind because he winced a little bit, but that wasn't because you felt skin pinching, was it?
Yeah.
It was because my
Pressure.
finger pushing from behind.
Pressure something.
Do you still have the pressure?
A little bit.
Well, you let me know.
So here we're
Just a
using
little
what's really a,
something for you.
a pointy
And then
hemostat
what we'll do
called an NSV
is
dissecting
supplement
clamp.
with a little extra.
Here we make a little opening
And
into the heart of the
ideal
vas,
situation
spread
here,
all
now,
layers.
If you want to watch any of this, by the way, you're more than welcome to lift up on your elbows.
And then let me, might actually be easier if I mute this.
So I just kind of looked out.
So here we're lifting the vas through and then re-grabbing it with the, and now there's 4 additional steps: isolate, cauterize, divide, and separate. So we'll isolate the vas from the, its mesentery, so to speak, the support structures. Now we'll use thermal cautery, which is basically a battery powered hot wire cautery that slides right in, cauterizing about 6 millimeters of the abdominal end of the vas, then dividing it with the same thing. The abdominal end of the vas sinks up into the sheath around the vas, and now we're closing the sheath over it so that the 2 layers are separated by a tissue layer, and then putting a hemoclip on the tissue itself, not on the vas, just on the sheath, so that the testicular end is held outside the sheath and the abdominal end is held inside the sheath. And now you can see that we've got good end separation and good vascular control. And the same thing is done on the left-hand side using the same little opening, because the skin and the vas are both very easy to manipulate. So let me close that one out. So again, not to bore you, but you could look at a lot of vasectomies being done by different operators. We all have our different styles. And but most of us use the American Urological Association guidelines, would suggest that this technique has the lowest complication rate and lowest failure rate.
Very good, thank you. And by not using the scalpel, you're not using the scalpel to dissect the or to cut the vas. Is that where you eliminate the scalpel, or cutting the skin too?
You're not cutting the skin, because then you'll be cutting through capillaries. This way, we make a little bit of an opening and then spread, and it sort of spreads the blood vessels out. So oftentimes you don't get any skin bleeding at all, because you're just cracking the skin open, and the opening is so small that maybe you could stuff a BB through it, but not much more than that. So it's so small, no stitches are required. So you don't have to have any stitches removed, and everything just drops right back in. And that's why it's a very good technique in low resource areas, because you can go so fast.
Fascinating. Anybody have any questions?
Doug,
I'm sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
I just was awestruck by your whole operation. It's phenomenal. I had no idea this was going on. And little Tampa here, we've got this World Health Organization in our midst. Have you reached out to other organizations to power up what you're doing now more, or do you even need any help? For example, I'm thinking of Alan Guttmacher in the US, or something with UN or some world organization like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations that really like what we do. It really becomes a practical thing, Bruce. We really need, in a certain country, for us to go there, we need a spirited doctor who will help us with three things. Number one, licensing issues. We really don't seem to require licenses in Haiti. They don't seem to ask for that, but we did in a kind of a loose way in the Philippines, and Kenya made it easy for us to get licenses, but we really had trouble getting anything in Ethiopia. India can be hard to get licenses. And so you really need a doctor on the ground to, number one, help you with licensing. Number two, to organize the locations where we will provide the service. And number three, run a sort of a public education program that lets people know about vasectomy, and that this international team of so-called experts are coming and can help if you feel that vasectomy is right for you. So it's really a matter of getting the boots on the, it's really a matter of getting the doctors in these countries who would invite us in and take care of those logistics. Haiti is kind of easy because it's so close to Florida. They don't put any roadblocks in front of us, but it's hard because it's risky. It's hard to get doctors to go there when they just heard that 11 people were kidnapped or that roadblocks. Sylvia, have you been there for a while? Your microphone is off.
Me?
We
Sylvia's-
haven't been since
thank you.
January 2020, right before the lockdown. It's just too dangerous right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really only dangerous in Port-au-Prince. Cap-Haïtien's not as bad as Port-au-Prince, but even so, you have to fly into the big city to get to where you go, and that can be pretty risky. So no.
Yeah. We were there in May of 2021, and that was, and I'm not really too concerned about COVID anymore because everybody who goes is double vaxxed and boosted, but I am a little, but the president was assassinated on July 7th. So that introduced some civil unrest there and gasoline shortages. So it's tough for us to get around, and it's hard to convince people to go there when they might not come back unless their wife or husband pays $1 million to get them back. But it's because it's close. Kenya is pretty tough because it's hard to get to, that the only nonstop to East Africa is on Ethiopian Airlines to Addis Ababa out of Washington, D.C. So it's just logistically, you got to go by way of Europe or take that Ethiopian flight and connect in Addis Ababa. And as I said, the Philippines and Indonesia are on the other side of the planet. So logistically, you have to feel confident that you're going to be able to be useful once you get there. You don't want to go to the other side of the planet and have no patience and go there with no patience so that you can't be very useful.
Doug, can you comment? We were supposed to have another guest of Dr. Stein's. There was a Dr. Mesadu who he's due in a few minutes from Haiti, but his flights were delayed over the last couple of days due to weather. And I read his bio, and it's just a fascinating story how he is a family of 11, I think, siblings, and he went to med school, and his wife's a nurse. And can you tell us a little bit about him and how he got into the program?
Yeah, it seems to me that every doctor in Haiti is amazing, having come up through very difficult circumstances. And his bio is on the NSVI website. If you go to Haiti domestic program, there's a link to his whole bio. And I wish he were here. We actually invited him to come to the vasectomy ski seminar. My wife and I have a couple of condos out in Colorado, and we had some of the most prolific vasectomists in about 7 or 8 countries join us there. So it was a lot of fun for the week. And Maudlin was invited to come because another person who wanted to come was this donor who went up in a Jeff Bezos rocket not too long ago. So you had, I had this very, very poor fellow against this uber rich guy who's, it was quite a juxtaposition of people. But Maudlin was born in Mumbai, I think. Sylvia, correct me if any of this is wrong, but his dad died when he was fairly young. He was from a big family, and I think some of his siblings had health issues, and he really wanted to become a doctor. And then met an American family who would support him through medical school. And right now, he's just one of the most dedicated guys I've ever seen. He has doubled the, he's gone to a new clinic. And the secret to Maudlin, because I have asked him, there is another doctor there, a urologist, Julius Thalusme, who helped us with a complication one time. So I thought, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity to get another second domestic team. And Julius has done none, despite us giving him all the equipment that he needs, despite giving us him enough disposables to do 30 cases. And I went to Maudlin and I said, Maudlin, how is it that you get all these patients? And he said, because I take care of them. I've delivered their babies, and I've taken care of them when they're sick, and they just have a level. And I do educational seminars for men and men's involvement in family planning, vasectomy specifically. And he said, they just trust me. So it really is testimony to the power of the family medicine doctor in providing family planning services. And I think even in some societies, you say, well, gosh, why are there so many tubal ligations done in some societies compared to vasectomies? Why are there still as many tubals done in the United States? And I think it's because women grow trustful of doctors that have taken care of them for years. And that's why about 1/3 of my trainees now are OBGYNs who say, I just can't get my families into a urologist's office. And when they go, the guy's charging $2,000. My patients can't afford that kind of money, especially if they're working in federally qualified healthcare centers or in Planned Parenthood facilities. You're not dealing with people who can shell out $2,000 after insurance. So the OBGYNs have become very interested in learning vasectomy. And now, as you could see in some of my slides, they're active participants in not only setting up their own vasectomy programs within their own practices, but also in joining us on missions. My objective that I decided in 2000 was to prevent unintended pregnancies in whatever way I can. So if I can train someone and maybe turn my hands into his or her hands and prevent unintended pregnancies through that other person, I'm all in.
Very good. Thanks for the update on him. Anybody else have any questions for Doug?
Doug, what was that tool that you used when you were triangulating the VAS?
Let me see if I have one. I usually have them right here on my desk. It's basically a tool that is a very, very pointy hemostat. You mean when I was spreading the skin?
No, when you were triangulating, anesthetizing the VAS, it was a stainless steel tube.
Oh, that's a Metajet. It's a spray applicator. It's piston loaded. I probably should have one here now. I just used one this morning. We have about a dozen. I could show you that, but it just sprays whatever we load into it. And usually I load 2% lidocaine unless I'm training, in which I have a combination of 2% lidocaine and 0.5% bupivacaine to give us a little extra time. But it actually sprays about 0.1 milliliter of the anesthetic loaded into it in a very fine spray. that is very thin enough to penetrate the skin and strong enough to penetrate to a depth of about 3 millimeters. So it really nicely goes around the vas and anesthetizes the vas. And it seems that it will spread along the vas. So you can anesthetize the vas. You can anesthetize the vas here and then do the vasectomy here. And the guy will be completely anesthetic here, even though you administered it here, because it seems that the anesthetic dissects nicely along the 3 fascial layers surrounding the vas, so that it's really pretty easy to use. So we're really doing vasectomies with a MetaJet using less than 1/2 of 1 cc for the entire procedure.
So it's under pressure?
Yeah, it's a spring-loaded device.
Okay.
Let me ask Vivian, hang on. Vivian, can you bring it? And yeah, it's under pressure. There is a spring into it, and it's actually nothing that's highly technical.
Together or apart?
Yeah, it's a little water in it, maybe. The MetaJet was actually originally crafted for dental use, and because people are afraid of needles. So he was either a dentist or a dental technologist, and his name was Ralph Adam. And he was going to name it the Atom Jet, but he thought that was a little vain. So he turned Atom backwards into the Meta. And that's why it's called the MetaJet. But he really, it really does a nice job, and it has taken some of the fear away. This is a MetaJet. Is that clear? I've got myself on background. And so you just, by cocking this, it draws a piston up out of a fill chamber, and this is the cylinder, and a little button on top will, so as I push the button, I don't know if you were able to see a little bit of a spray. There's a very, very tiny opening right here that it comes out of. And actually the dermatologists like it. I have a cousin who's a dermatologist in Germany, and she uses it all the time for skin lesions and such, but it really works beautifully for
Very, very cool.
fluted tip. And the vas kind of sits right in that fluted tip there and really does a great job. And that takes away the concern about needles. Nobody really likes the idea of a needle by his private parts. And to elaborate a little bit on, why I think vasectomy is a hard sell in some places, and even to some people in all places, is I think that after doing this for a lot of years, I think that men are just kind of shy. Women have a lot of practice in exposing themselves, their private areas. They start getting pap smears when they're 20, and they're used to going in for these annual exams. And then when they have babies, when they're delivering, somebody's examining them every 15 minutes to see how it goes along, and they're changing shifts. So it's a new stranger examining you every time. So I think that women just have a comfort level, not only with their gynecologists and obstetricians, and say, okay, go ahead with my tubal ligation, but they also have a comfort level in having their private parts examined, where some guys haven't had their privates examined since they had a hernia exam in high school. So they're really a little bit shy about it. And I think that's a little bit of the resistance to male involvement in family planning too. I don't think they're really afraid of pain that much. I mean, look at all the things guys do to themselves that cause pain. They play football, they play soccer, they're getting kicked and battered around all the time. So some of them are concerned about pain down there, but I think there's also a shyness component to it also. And I think that the best promoters of vasectomy are guys who've had vasectomies.
Nobody wants to hurt Johnson and the boys, trust me.
No, not at all.
Well, Doug, I want to thank you. It was a wonderful review, and most of us know you've been doing this for this long, and to finally get you in person was really a treat for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I have an associate now, and he's doing most of the running around the state. In fact, today he's in Port Orange over by Daytona, but tomorrow he and I will both be in Ocala. So I still have a few more trips internationally and a little bit more running around the state to do. I'm not ready to quite give it up yet.
Do you still have all the billboards around the state?
We probably have about 10 still going, mostly on the interstates to let guys know that they're there. And I think that I think that referrals to us are sort of multifactorial. Friends is at least 40%, and probably Google searches is about 40%, and the billboards. But it all sort of blends. So one friend will say, yeah, go to the guy on the billboard, which is a little scary as itself, going to a guy on a billboard. But they all sort of, was that guy referred by a friend, or was he referred by the billboard? I don't really know.
Did you see an increase when the internet took off, whenever that was, 10, 15 years ago? Did you see an increase in people wanting to get it done from the internet?
Well, the internet has been fairly slow to develop. People say, how'd you get VasWeb? How'd you come up with that? Well, in 1996, I think it was, maybe earlier in the 90s, I was doing a vasectomy on an endocrinologist from town. And I said, and he said, boy, you should have a website. And I said, what's a website? And he said, that's where people go to learn about things on the internet. And I said, the internet? But anyway, I wasn't quite that dense at that time. But you remember that there was a time when we were all using beepers. Anyway, he said, I said, gosh, if I had a website, what would I call it? And he said, I don't know, whatever you want. I said, well, what do you call yours? And he said, I call it EndoWeb. And I said, well, how about VasWeb? He said, fine. And at that time, vasectomy.com had not been taken. I guess I missed out. But anyway, that's how I wound up with VasWeb. So it's been such a slow evolution of that. And then social media came in. And I guess we've never advertised really on social media. We kind of just haven't gone that way. We've got enough business with the letting people know and the billboards, because my feeling has always been that I want to bring it to their attention. So once somebody actually does an internet search, he's already oriented toward thinking that way. I want to catch the guy who's driving on I-4 or I-75 and sees this billboard and never even thought of it before. And so now we do vasectomies on guys whose fathers we've done, in one case whose grandfather we did, been around too long, I guess. And they'll say, Doc, I've been seeing your billboard since I was 14. And I just, it's just become part of my whole psyche to have a couple of kids and then have a vasectomy. And that's really the way it is. And the vasectomy rate is about 37%, one of the highest in the world in Quebec, because the Canadian government pays for it in its entirety. So you don't have to pay anything to get it. And in Quebec, it's like, you have your 2 kids or your 3 kids and it's boom, boom, vasectomy, boom, boom, vasectomy. And it's almost like an understood thing in that society that men get vasectomies when they're done having as many kids as they want.
Very good. Well, it's almost 1, and I'm going to let Doug go. And thanks again for your time and information.
You're welcome.
Take care and good luck with that now.
As you can tell, I always love talking about vasectomy. Very good. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
You can, if anybody wants to hang around for another minute or two just to say hi and what's cooking, anything new, and